Hello everyone and welcome back to my channel. So my name's Katie and today I'm going to be talking about some underrated YA fantasy books. So yeah, this is my little series of underrated / underhyped books that I think more people should read, and today we're going to be talking about YA fantasy. So I already did adult fantasy, so yeah, this is some recommendations. So let's just get into the video. So the first book I'm going to be talking about is Nightshine by Tessa Gratton, and this one is like peak Studio Ghibli vibes. Tessa Gratton's writing is so beautiful, and just the way it's told, it's kind of a bit meandery, but also there's just so many like cute tender character moments, and like there's these really adorable little like spritey creatures, and just the whole magic and like just vibes. And there's some really great queer representation as well. There's like a kind of sapphic relationship and an Achillean relationship, and there's a prince who's gender fluid, and yeah, I just really like it all. So essentially we're following Nothing, who is like this orphan in the palace, and she is great friends with Kirin, who's the prince, but then one day Kirin gets kidnapped by this sorceress who eats girls, and then Nothing has to team up with Kirin's bodyguard called Sky to go and save Kirin. And they're all great characters. I love Sky, he's like a himbo, and Nothing's like this little feral character. And then the sorceress who eats girls is like evil female, always great. And then Kirin's a really great character as well. So that they are, I would say, with the main characters, and it's just really great. It's like an adventure, but there's also a lot of kind of character angst and drama, and also Nothing like finding her way and like finding her inner power and her inner identity as well, I think is a big thing. Yeah, and I also really like the whole sort of setting, and like there's these mountains which have kind of sorcerers to them, and like the spirits of the mountain. It's just all really good, so I would highly recommend that one. So yeah. Okay, and then we have my favourite probably YA series, which I never see anyone read or talk about, but I love it, and that is The Seven Realms and the Shattered Realms by Cindy Williams China. So the Seven Realms series, the first one's called The Demon King, and that's essentially 4 books basically following these two characters called Han and Racer. And Han is like this street criminal who one day discovers these demon cuffs. Is it cuffs or an amulet? I think it's an amulet. He has this demon amulet, and that gets him into a lot of trouble with the magicians of the world, and also has magic. And then also Racer, who is the princess. And in the first book, I would say their storylines are quite separate, but they do interact briefly, but then the storylines kind of get more and more crossed over. But I just really like the whole sort of vibes. It's very sort of Austrian Alpine mountain type environment, and it's very sort of classic. Like there's like the princess, and then there's like the magicians, and I think they're called wizards actually, but they have their like magic and like their powers, and it's just very like classic, and it's just a lot of fun. And there's some really great characters as well, not just Han and Racer, but there's a lot of great side characters. I think, what are they called? Cat and Dancer, I think, are the ones in that series, but they're also really great. And then the Shattered Realms follows the children of characters from the first series, which is, I always love that, and also some other new characters, because they're kind of following like these characters who are mage marked, and they're being hunted down by this like evil empress, and then they sort of end up interacting with some other characters from the first series. And there's a lot of politics going on, and there's these 7 realms, and in the first one, I think, it's been too long since I read them, but I'm sure the world is called the Fells. The main like kingdom in the 7 realms is called the Fells, but then there's all the other realms causing various problems. So yeah, and then there's like the line, there's also this like magic within the throne line. There's like the wolves, and I can't quite remember, but anyway, yeah, it's good. Actually, in a way, it kind of reminds me of Robin Hood, like the fells and the castle and things remind me a bit of like Bookkeep. But anyway, I would definitely recommend, and I especially love the Shattered Realms because there's dragons, and in the 4th book there's baby dragons, and they're so cute. And I just really like all the characters as well, especially in the 2nd series. Yeah, it's just a really great series, and I think if you're looking just for, so I think especially if you're a fan of adult fantasy looking for some YA fantasy, I think they're a really great series, because there's a lot, and there's a lot of like politics and a lot of kind of, I don't know what the word is, like magical drama and that you don't always get in YA. So yeah, would highly recommend. Okay, then next we have The Ones We're Meant to Find by Joan He, and this one I think is really underrated and it's really good. It's kind of almost climate dystopia, which I think is really interesting and very kind of topical. So basically following these two sisters kind of in two different timelines. So one of them is on a beach, and she's like isolated completely by herself, and she's trying to escape from this, I don't think it's a beach, I think it's an island with a beach on it type thing, to try and get back to her sister. And then we're also following this other timeline of the other sister who is trying to save her sister, like leading the hunt because her sister's just gone missing. And yeah, there's a lot of interesting things going on, like why she's gone missing and what happened there. And at the same time there's this whole thing of like, they live on these like, can't remember exactly what they're called, but like bubbles in the sky essentially, but you're only allowed to get into them if you meet a certain criteria of like eco-friendliness. And then there's different levels, like, and the more kind of eco-friendly you are, the more like merit you have in society essentially. And people are still living on like the surface, but like the world's been wrecked by kind of climate disaster. So I think that's really interesting element to it, and then it almost becomes a how do we save the world type of thing, and there's some really interesting twists as well. And I really like there's sort of a bit of an AI element to it as well, which I also really liked. So yeah, I would definitely recommend that one. And Joan He's writing is really beautiful as well. That one also gives me Studio Ghibli vibes. Yeah, so just, yeah, would definitely recommend. Okay, and then we also have Crown of Feathers, which is another one. Okay, so Seven Shattered Realms, like my favourite YA fantasy, but then Crown of Feathers like a very close second. And I just love this one. Like Phoenix Riders is like all you need to know. So we're essentially following Veronica, who has grown up with her sister Val, and Val and Veronica have a bit of a kind of tumultuous / slightly abusive relationship. But Veronica essentially finds this phoenix egg and hatches a little phoenix, but then Val sort of kills the phoenix, although that's not quite clear if the phoenix is actually dead. But Veronica then essentially gets very upset and runs away, and then wants to join these Phoenix Riders. So then she can't join the Phoenix Riders because she's a girl, so she has to pretend to be a boy called Nick, and then she joins the Phoenix Riders, and that's kind of the story of her like training to be a Phoenix Rider. And there's various like empire politics as well, because the Phoenix Riders are essentially persecuted. They have been like all killed off, so they're now, the Phoenix Riders are training in secret, and Veronica is an Animage, so the Animages are like mages who can talk to animals, and they are also being persecuted by this like empire. So yeah, that's kind of the story. But I just love all the characters. They're all, well, Veronica and a friend she meets at the Eyrie where they train the Phoenix Riders called Tristan are both such cinnamon rolls. They're so great. But I love that, and I love in YA that it's that kind of character, and like using the kindness and compassion that they have for animals and other humans to try and like succeed in their goals. I really like. They're also following Severo, who is this like spy, or Severo or Sev, I think it might just be Sev, and Severo is his full name, but and he is essentially like working as a guard for the Empire, but then gets recruited into this like spy rebel scheme. I also really like his story, and it's just a really great series, and I think there's a lot going on. And again, it's another series that if you like adult fantasy but you want to read some YA, or if you like YA fantasy but want to maybe just push yourself a little bit, I think it's a great series because there's a lot going on. So yeah, would highly recommend that one. What else have we got? Oh yeah, so Girl of Fire and Thorns by Ray Carson. I really like this series. I have, what do I have? I have the fourth book, which is not quite the original trilogy. Can't remember exactly what happens or the exact name of the main character. It's like Eliza, or it definitely begins with like L. And she basically gets sent to be betrothed to this king, and has to navigate the politics there. That's essentially the story. But there's quite an interesting storyline as well with binge eating, which I thought was really good and interesting to see in a fantasy, because I feel like you don't see that a lot. And then as the books go on, it starts getting more political, and there is one of my absolute favourite romances in YA fantasy. Very like angsty, very Princess Bridey, with like the whole like as you wish. Oh, I just love Hector, who is the male character. Oh yeah, and I just love it. And there's various like adventurous quests and lots of politics and lots of sort of subtle magic, I would say, and lots of great characters that you meet, and it's just an all-around good time, so would highly recommend. Next we have The Midnight Lie by Marie Rutowski. I'm gonna get it. So The Midnight Lie and The Hollow Heart, which is a sequel, and these are a duology. So I feel like her first series, The Winner's Curse, was really popular at the time when it came out, but I've not seen that many people reading the sequels. They're not really, I feel like you could quite easily read them without having read the original trilogy, although I do think The Hollow Heart you get more out of if you've read the original trilogy, but they do sort of stand on their own, and they are sapphic, and yeah, I just really love them. And so the first one, we're kind of following Nirim, who is living on this sort of island. I'll put them down, and she is something called Half Keith, and the full Keith are like really powerful. It's almost like the Hunger Games, they're like capital people. They like have all these like dramatic parties and like dressing up and things, but they essentially are like quite corrupt and use the magic of the Half Keith to like fuel their lifestyle, and the Half Keith are quite like oppressed and stuff. And Nirim is like with her sort of aunt slash adopted mother, who runs a scheme for trying to get people out of the island. But there's also quite a toxic relationship there, and a lot of gaslighting from the mother aunt character, which I think is interesting, and that kind of relationship explored. And then Nirim meets Sid, who is like this traveller who's come to the island, and strikes up a bit of a relationship there. And yeah, I can't quite remember then exactly what happens, but various drama goes down, and Sid's also trying to investigate the magic that's happening on this island, and this kind of corruption that's going on between the Half Keith and the Keith, and that all happens. And there's also some certain like godly type characters interfering with events, which I think is interesting. And then The Hollow Heart also follows the same characters again, but we'll also get more from Sid in book 2, and seeing her relationship with her family and her sort of relationship with her kind of gender and sexuality. I thought was really well explored and very interesting. It's very like angsty and like sapphic pining and yearning, and it's just also good, so I would highly recommend. And they're quite short reads as well, but yeah. And Marie Rutowski's writing is really good, and it's just that kind of angsty, beautiful, I don't know, it's just good, so would highly recommend. This is me pushing my agenda, because Sword of Kagen is a great book, and it's very popular, and well, has become very popular. When I read it, like literally no one had read it, but it is now very hyped on book Twitter, which is a great thing. It's an amazing book, would highly recommend. But no one has read the Theonite books, which are like Emma Wang's kind of companion series to Sword of Kagen. I think she wrote them before Sword of Kagen, but people need to read it because they're really good. And they're kind of, I would say they toe the line between like middle grade and YA, but they're just really fun, and it's almost like cheesy like superhero type books. And the first one following Joan and Daniel, and Joan essentially has these like powers which she's never known what to do with, and then she meets Daniel, who also has these powers, and Daniel's father Robin, and then they like help Joan, and all this stuff goes down, and then eventually they end up going on this like, they somehow end up on a spaceship, and they meet a load of other characters, and there's various drama happening on the spaceship, and one of the characters that they meet is Izumo, who is one of Misaki's sons. And I think you also, Robin is a big character in the Sword of Kagan actually, and Daniel you meet at the very end. And yeah, I just love them all. It's that kind of adventure story, and it's just a lot of fun. And I don't know, I guess people maybe don't read it because it's never gonna get a third book, which is really sad because I want to know what happens. And book 2 especially is so good, like the kind of space station drama, it's just really good, and there's some great characters, and yeah, I think more people need to read it, but no one does, so I'm left in my own little Theonite bubble. But yeah, that's me pushing my agenda for that one. And then the last book I'm going to talk about is Fireborn by Rasira Munda. So I've only read Fireborn actually, but I've heard really good things about the sequel Flamefall, so I really want to read that soon, but it's actually quite hard to get hold of in the UK, so I need to work out a way to track it down. I think you can get it on Book Depository, it's just quite expensive. So yeah, and this one we're essentially following Lee and Annie. So Lee, I think, was I might be getting these two the wrong way around. It's been a while since I read it, but it's really good on like dragons and politics, and especially for YA, I think the politics is really good. So I think Lee is the sort of the like king or the ruler, and then they all get killed, but Lee is like taken pity on by the rebel leaders and kind of almost taken in by them. So Lee then is brought up in this new world under a new regime. And then Annie, who is this other character, I can't quite remember how she comes into the story, but essentially they're at this like training camp thing where they're like learning to control their dragons, and it's like how to train your dragon. I'm pretty sure that's what happens. But yeah, there's various problems with the Empire going on, because obviously it's like this new regime, and Lee is sometimes used by them as like this almost like figurehead for the old thing. Like he's like seen as like this, we are still like thinking of traditional values. I'm not explaining that well, but I think it's really interesting how that's done. And I heard the second book, I feel like, has some good new characters, and there's a lot of like angsty kind of relationship drama. It's not even like drama, but like that sort of comforting teenage angst, I feel like, is good. So yeah, I would highly recommend that one as well. And that is everything for this video, so I hope you enjoyed. Let me know in the comments a YA fantasy series that you would like more people to read. I would love to know, and if you enjoyed the video, please give it a like and consider subscribing if you haven't already. And yeah, I hope you're all having a really great day, and I'll see you next time.